His breath was hot against my neck, ragged like he'd been holding it in too long. My back pressed into the kitchen counter, the edge biting into my hips as his hands gripped my waist. Fingers trembling, but sure, the air smelled of his cologne sandalwood, sharp, and my own sweat. His body was heavy against mine, all muscle and urgency, and I felt the strain in him. The way he pushed closer, trying to fit himself to me, it wasn't working. Not at first. His forehead creased, frustration flickering in his eyes, but I whispered, "Try again." My voice barely a thread, and his gaze locked on mine, dark and desperate. My thighs shook as I shifted, guiding him. And when it finally happened, the pressure was overwhelming, a slow burn that made my breath catch. His rhythm was uneven, like he was afraid to break me. But I didn't want careful. I wanted to feel something real, even if it was wrong. I never imagined I'd cross this line. Not at 38. Not with my daughter's boyfriend, Ryan. I'm Susan, a single mom who spent the last decade raising Emily, my 20-year-old, while keeping our small house in order. Emily is my world bright, stubborn, with her father's smile. Ryan showed up 6 months ago, 24, broad-shouldered with a quiet charm that filled the room. He's good to her, always opening doors, laughing at her jokes. But that night, in the kitchen, it wasn't Emily he was looking at. It was me. It started innocently enough. Ryan would come over for dinner, help with dishes, linger to talk about his construction job or my old photo albums. Emily was usually there, but sometimes she'd be at work, and it would just be us. I'd catch him watching me. Nothing blatant, just a glance that held too long. I told myself it was nothing. I'm not that kind of woman. I've got stretch marks and a mortgage, not some fantasy life. But there was a hunger in his eyes, and God help me. It woke something in me I thought was long dead. What would you do if your daughter's boyfriend kissed you first? If he leaned in one night after too many beers and pressed his lips to yours? Soft but deliberate, like he'd been thinking about it for weeks. That's what happened 2 nights before the kitchen. I pushed him away, said, "Ryan, no." But my voice cracked, and he saw it the way my hands shook, the way I didn't scream or slap him. I should have told Emily. I should have kicked him out. But I didn't. And that silence, that choice, it changed everything. The night in the kitchen wasn't planned. Emily was at a friend's and Ryan came by to grab his jacket. He stood too close, his arm brushing mine as he reached for it. I could have stepped back. I didn't. When he kissed me again, I let it happen. Let his hands find my skin. Let the counter hold my weight as we fumbled, desperate and clumsy. It wasn't smooth or perfect. It was raw, messy, human. And when it was over, his forehead pressed to mine, both of us panting. I felt alive for the first time in years. But the guilt was already creeping in, sharp as a blade. I don't know how to live with this. I don't know how to look at Emily and not see what I've done. But I let him try again. And now there's no going back. The next morning, I stared at myself in the bathroom mirror like I was trying to recognize a stranger. My hair was tangled, lips swollen, the faintest shadow of a bruise on my collarbone where Ryan's mouth had been. I ran my fingers over it, trembling. What kind of mother does this? Emily's laughter floated from the kitchen downstairs, sweet and careless, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. She was talking to Ryan. His deep voice rumbled in reply, casual, like nothing had happened, like he hadn't been inside me against that same counter hours earlier. I wanted to scream at him, to tell him never to come back. But when I walked down, his eyes caught mine, just a flicker. And my stomach dropped. He looked calm, too calm. Emily poured coffee, chatting about her plans for the day, while I gripped the edge of the table. praying she wouldn't notice my hands shaking. When Ryan stood to leave, he brushed by me, his fingers grazing mine under the table. So small, so fast, but it sent heat rushing to my face. For days, I told myself it was over, that it had been a mistake we would never repeat. But Ryan didn't let it go. He found reasons to linger after Emily left for class, helping me fix a leaky faucet, carrying groceries, always close enough that I could smell his cologne, feel the heat radiating from his body. "Susan," he whispered once, when Emily was in the shower, his breath at my ear. My knees almost buckled. I told him to stop, but my voice betrayed me, too soft, too weak. The second time it happened, Emily was in the next room. She'd fallen, asleep on the couch, headphones in, her textbook open on her chest. Ryan and I sat at the kitchen table, our knees brushing. I tried to move mine away, but he followed, pressing closer, his hand sliding onto my thigh under the tablecloth. My pulse roared in my ears. "Please," I whispered, but it wasn't a plea to stop. Not really. When he leaned in, his lips brushed my ear, my jaw, until I turned just enough to meet his mouth. It was reckless, unbearable, electric. My body betrayed me again, leaning into him, fingers clutching his shirt. Every sound from the living room made my heart lurch, but I couldn't stop. His hand slid higher. My breath hitched, and for a moment I forgot everything Emily. The house, the life I'd built. There was only heat and want. When he finally pulled back, my lips swollen, his eyes burned with the same hunger I saw in the kitchen that first night. I told myself afterward that I hated him for dragging me into this, but the truth was darker. I hated myself more for not wanting to stop. Weeks passed like a dangerous game I couldn't walk away from. Every glance Ryan gave me when Emily wasn't looking, every accidental touch, every stolen second alone, it all built into something unbearable. I told myself I was in control, that I could end it whenever I wanted. But deep down I knew I was lying. I was addicted to him, to the way he looked at me like I wasn't invisible. Like I wasn't just a tired middle-aged woman, but someone worth wanting. One night, Emily invited friends over for a study group. I stayed upstairs, telling myself I'd keep out of the way. But then I heard Ryan's laugh drift up through the floorboards, and my body reacted before my mind could stop it. I crept halfway down the stairs, just to see him. He was sitting on the couch, arms stretched lazily along the back, Emily leaning against him. She didn't notice the way his eyes flicked up, finding me in the shadows. My breath caught. That look, that slow, knowing smile it was for me, not her later. After the guests left and Emily went to bed, I found him lingering in the kitchen again. "You shouldn't be here," I whispered harshly, though my body was already trembling. He stepped closer, pinning me against the fridge with nothing but the weight of his presence. "Then tell me to leave," he said. My lips parted, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I closed the distance, and in seconds we were kissing. Again, desperate, silent, the taste of guilt and hunger flooding my mouth. It didn't matter that Emily was asleep upstairs. It didn't matter that this was the worst betrayal a mother could commit. In that moment, nothing mattered except his hands, his breath, the dizzying pull I couldn't escape. When it was over, I pressed my forehead to his chest, tears burning. My eyes. "What are we doing?" I asked, my voice breaking. Ryan's hand lifted my chin, forcing me to look at him. "You know exactly what we're doing," he said softly, and the truth of it terrified me more than anything. By the time autumn settled in, the affair was no longer an accident, it was a pattern. Ryan found excuses to come over when Emily was at class, and I let him. Some days we barely spoke, just tumbled into each other like we'd been starving for weeks. Other days he lingered, touching me in ways that made my heart ache, whispering things I couldn't let myself believe. I knew it couldn't last, but I also knew I didn't want it to end. The guilt ate at me constantly. I'd watch Emily laugh at her phone or study late into the night, and my chest would tighten with shame. She trusted me, and I was betraying her in the cruelest way. I tried to pull back, to ignore Ryan's calls, but then he'd show up at the door, his eyes locking onto mine, and all my resistance crumbled. It was like fighting the tide with bare hands. One Saturday, Emily suggested a weekend trip with her friends, leaving Ryan behind. When she asked if I minded keeping him company, I nearly choked. "Of course not," I said, forcing a smile, even as panic and longing tangled inside me. The second she drove away, Ryan closed the distance between us and kissed me like he'd been waiting for years. That weekend blurred into something dangerous: meals shared at the table, laughter in the living room, nights tangled in sheets I swore he'd never touch. It was a mockery of something real, and I hated myself for loving it. On Sunday night, when Emily's car finally pulled into the driveway, I stood at the sink, washing dishes with trembling hands. Ryan sat casually at the table, scrolling his phone as if nothing had happened. Emily burst in, hugging him first before kissing his cheek. I watched them, my throat tight, my heart pounding. No one would ever suspect, but I knew the truth was carving itself deeper into both of us. When I caught Ryan's eyes over Emily's shoulder, the look we shared told me everything we were too far gone. The days that followed felt like walking across thin ice, each step heavier than the last. I tried to convince myself it would end on its own, that Ryan would grow tired of me and turn his full attention back to Emily. But the opposite happened. His glances became bolder, his touches riskier, as if he enjoyed testing how close we could get before everything shattered. One evening, Emily went upstairs to shower while Ryan and I remained in the living room. The silence between us was thick, charged. I sat rigid on the couch, pretending to scroll through the TV guide, when suddenly his hand brushed mine. My breath caught, my body betraying me even as my mind screamed no. "You drive me crazy," he whispered, so low I almost thought I imagined it. I turned to face him, and before I could stop myself, our lips collided. The sound of footsteps on the stairs snapped us apart. Emily entered a second later, towel around her hair, smiling as she asked if we wanted pizza. I forced a laugh, heart hammering, while Ryan leaned back in his chair like nothing had happened. My daughter didn't notice a thing. She never did. That ignorance, that trust, made my shame unbearable but not strong enough to stop. Later that night, after Emily had gone to bed, Ryan lingered in the kitchen again. His eyes burned into mine, daring me to deny what was between us. "This won't end well," I told him, voice trembling. He stepped closer, brushing a strand of hair from my face. "Maybe," he said, "but I don't care." And when his lips found mine once more, I realized neither did I. I had crossed too many lines already. Turning back was no longer an option. The first slip came on a Wednesday afternoon. Emily had forgotten her notebook and came back home between classes. I was in the kitchen with Ryan, his hands still warm on my waist when the door creaked open. We jumped apart, my pulse pounding so hard I thought it might echo through the room. Emily walked in, distracted, not noticing the tension in the air. I forced a smile, asked how her morning went, and prayed she couldn't see the guilt written across my face. Ryan sat casually at the table, but I caught the faint smirk tugging at his lips. He liked the danger. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake listening to Emily's steady breathing in the next room, wondering how she would look at me if she ever found out. The thought of her hatred twisted my stomach, yet the memory of Ryan's touch refused to leave me. I was trapped in a prison of my own making, torn between the daughter I loved and the man I couldn't resist. The cracks grew wider. Emily started to notice the way Ryan lingered in the kitchen after meals, or how our conversations stretched too long when she left the room. Once, she teased me lightly, "You two get along better than I expected." I laughed too loudly, my cheeks burning, while Ryan just smiled like it was a private joke. One evening, when Emily went upstairs to take a call, Ryan pressed me against the wall in the hallway, kissing me with a hunger that left me trembling. "You're playing with fire," I whispered when I pushed him away. His reply was a low murmur against my ear. "Then let it burn." For the first time, I realized he might not be afraid of getting caught. And that terrified me more than anything. It happened on a Sunday evening, the kind of quiet night that should have felt ordinary. Emily was upstairs working on an essay while Ryan and I sat in the living room, pretending to watch a movie neither of us cared about. His hand brushed mine, then stayed there, and for once I didn't pull away. I should have thought about my daughter only a floor above us. But the truth was, I was too far gone. The creak of the stairs snapped us apart. Emily's voice came before she appeared, light and casual. "What are you two watching?" My heart stopped. Ryan shifted quickly, but I knew the look on my face betrayed me. Emily's eyes narrowed as she glanced between us, suspicion dawning in her expression. The silence was suffocating. Later that night, after Ryan had gone home, Emily confronted me in the kitchen. "Mom," she said, her voice trembling, "tell me the truth. Is there something going on between you and Ryan?" My throat tightened, words dying on my tongue. I wanted to deny it, to protect her, to erase every mistake, but my silence was the answer she didn't want. Her eyes filled with tears before she turned and walked away, leaving me rooted to the floor, my chest hollow and burning. The next morning, Ryan didn't come. Days passed, and then weeks. Emily stopped mentioning him. But the quiet between us was different now, strained, fragile, filled with a hurt I could never undo. I had lost them both, the man I couldn't resist, and the daughter whose trust I shattered. Standing at the window one evening, watching the leaves fall, I understood what I had done. Desire had blinded me, guilt had consumed me, and in the end, the love that should have mattered most was the price I paid. And that was the end of it.